Cashier humiliates elderly woman, but breaks down when he sees who her daughter is. Walter Thompson trembled as he tried to organize the coins at the supermarket checkout, his arthritic hands fighting against every penny that slipped through his fingers. The young employee behind the counter tapped his fingers impatiently on the surface, while the line behind the 73-year-old man grew longer every second. The cashier, a young man of about 25 named Brandon, sighed loudly and began making sarcastic remarks. Walter just apologized softly, trying to speed up the payment process, but his shaky hands weren't cooperating. It was the third time that week he had needed to go grocery shopping because his small pension didn't allow for large expenses all at once. "Sir, for God's sake, there are people waiting back here," said Brandon, raising his voice. "Couldn't you have sorted your money out beforehand?" Walter felt his face burn with shame. He was counting coin by coin, because every penny made a difference in his tight budget. The plastic bag in his hands contained only the essentials: a package of pasta, a can of tomato sauce, 2 bananas, and a small piece of chicken. "I'm sorry, son. I'm going as fast as I can," murmured the elderly man, his voice almost inaudible. "Son." "I'm not your son," Brandon shot back, now clearly irritated. "And another thing, couldn't you do this shopping at a time that isn't rush hour? There are a lot of working people here who need to have lunch." The words hit Walter like stones. He raised his teary eyes and saw the people in line showing impatience. A woman kept checking her watch. A man in a suit sighed loudly. A mother with a child in her arms shifted her weight from one foot to the other. They all seemed to blame him for the delay. I didn't know I was causing a problem," said Walter, his voice cracking slightly. "Can I leave the groceries and come back later?" "No, you've started now, you have to finish," said Brandon with disdain. "But next time think twice before coming shopping at rush hour without even having your money counted. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Walter continued counting the coins, his hands shaking even more from nervousness. One of the coins slipped out and rolled across the floor. When he bent down to pick it up, Brandon made a noise of impatience that caused several people in line to complain loudly. "Seriously, this is ridiculous," commented the woman with the watch. "I have an appointment. I can't stay here all afternoon." "This is why I avoid coming at this time," said the man in the suit. "There's always some old person causing a delay." Walter heard every word and felt as if they were driving knives into his chest. He just wanted to buy his food for the week. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But apparently, his mere existence bothered everyone. With the coin recovered, he continued the count. He only needed $3.40 more, but his hands seemed to no longer obey him. The coins slipped, fell, and he had to start the count over several times. "Look, now he's lost count again," Brandon said to the manager who was passing by. "Mrs. Karen, can't you do something? This is becoming a routine here." Karen, a middle-aged woman with a tired expression, approached the checkout. Walter recognized her. She had always been polite to him on his previous visits to the store. But now her face showed irritation. "Mr. Thompson, don't you think it would be better to do your shopping during quieter hours?" she suggested, trying to sound diplomatic, but with a tone that made it clear it was more of a demand than a suggestion. I work in the mornings, Mrs. Karen," explained Walter timidly. "I do some odd gardening jobs. I can only come in the afternoon." "Well, but perhaps you could try to come earlier or later," she insisted. "It's just that it really gets complicated for everyone when there's this delay in service." Walter felt a tear escape. At 73 years old, after a whole life of hard work, he was now being treated as a nuisance for wanting to buy food. He remembered when he was young and would help elderly people in line at the bank or the supermarket. How times had changed. "All right, next time I'll try," he said, lowering his head. "You say that, but you always come back at the same time," said Brandon, now clearly worked up. "Look, I'll be direct. You're disrupting the store's flow. There are people here who buy much more than those 4 little things there and need to be served." The humiliation was total. Walter finished counting his money in silence, while tears streamed silently down his wrinkled face. Brandon took the coins with a brusque gesture and tossed them into the cash drawer, making a deliberate noise. "There, next time come prepared," he said, pushing the small bag toward Walter. The elderly man took his groceries and started to walk away, but stopped when he heard Brandon commenting to the person in the next line, "Sorry about the wait. It's always the same thing with these old folks. They think the world revolves around them." Walter stopped in the middle of the aisle, breathing with difficulty. The humiliation had been so great that he felt a tightness in his chest, as if he couldn't breathe properly. He leaned on one of the shelves, trying to pull himself together. It was then that a young store employee approached him. Tiffany was a simple young woman about 20 years old who always treated him with kindness. She saw the state he was in and became worried. "Mr. Thompson, are you okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine, dear, thank you," he lied, trying to smile. "What happened back there at the register? I saw that you were—" She hesitated, not wanting to embarrass him further. "It's nothing, Tiffany. It's just that I was holding up the line, really," said Walter, taking the blame upon himself. Tiffany realized something was wrong. She had known Walter for over a year since she started working at the store, and he had always been one of the most polite and respectful customers she knew. She saw how he saved every penny, how he thanked her for any kindness, how he never complained about anything. "Mr. Thompson, can I ask you a question?" she said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "Of course, dear. Why do you always come shopping alone? You've never talked about your family." Walter hesitated. It was a question that stirred up old wounds, but Tiffany had always been kind to him. Maybe it would be good to confide in someone. It's complicated, Tiffany," he said, sighing. "I have a daughter, but she's very busy. I don't want to be a bother." "Busy with what?" "She works in television, you know. She's an important person. She can't be worrying about an old man like me." Tiffany looked surprised. Walter had never mentioned having a daughter who worked in television. But before she could ask more, Mrs. Karen appeared and called Tiffany back to work. "Tiffany, get back to your section. Things are picking up," said the manager. The young woman said goodbye to Walter with a worried look and went back to work. The elderly man left the store carrying his small bag and the weight of his humiliation. He walked slowly to the bus stop, his weak legs barely able to carry his tired body. Sitting at the stop, Walter took an old simple cell phone from his pocket. He stared at the screen for a few minutes, hesitating. There was a number saved as Amanda, daughter, but he hadn't called her in months. He didn't want to bother her. He didn't want to seem like a burden. Amanda Thompson Williams was the anchor of the main news program in the city of Bridgeport, in the tri-state area. At 42, she had built a solid career in journalism, respected for her seriousness and commitment to the truth. But this dedication to her work had created a distance between her and her father. At that moment, Amanda was in the newsroom preparing a story about the situation of the elderly in the country. Ironically, she was researching data on family abandonment and mistreatment of senior citizens, not imagining that her own father was going through a difficult situation just a few miles away. Walter put away his phone without making the call. He decided he didn't want to worry Amanda with his problems. She already had enough responsibilities. He could handle it alone, as he always had. On the bus ride back home, Walter rethought the whole situation. Maybe Brandon was right. Maybe he really was being a nuisance. Maybe he should find another place to shop, even if it was farther and more expensive. His simple little house in the East Side neighborhood welcomed him with its usual silence. Walter put the few groceries in the nearly empty refrigerator and sat down in the old armchair in the living room. There, alone, he finally allowed the tears to fall freely. He remembered how different it was when his wife, Dorothy, was still alive. She was the one who did the shopping, who handled things around the house, who took care of the details. Walter worked and she managed the home. When she passed away 5 years ago, he had to learn to do everything by himself. At first, Amanda came by more often. She helped with the shopping, organized his medicines, talked about life. But over time, her visits became less frequent. Her job became more demanding. She took on new projects, new commitments. And Walter, not wanting to be a burden, stopped asking for help. Now at 73, he managed as best he could. He did small gardening jobs to supplement his insufficient pension. He took care of the house alone. And he did his own shopping, even if it meant being humiliated in public. That night, Walter could barely sleep. Brandon's words echoed in his mind. It's always the same thing with these old people. They think the world revolves around them. Was that how people saw him? As a nuisance? As someone who got in the way of other people's lives? The next morning, Walter woke up determined to change. Maybe it really was time to accept that he was getting too old for certain things. Maybe he should ask Amanda for help, even at the risk of bothering her. Or maybe he should just find a smaller, quieter supermarket where he wouldn't bother anyone. But before making any decision, he had to finish a job. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly neighbor, had hired his services to take care of her garden. It was a simple job, but it would pay $30, money that was important for his tight budget. Walter picked up his gardening tools and headed to Mrs. Henderson's house. She was an 80-year-old lady, a widow like him, but in a slightly better financial situation. She always treated him with great respect and kindness, calling him Mr. Walter and offering him coffee when he finished the work. "Good morning, Mr. Walter," Mrs. Henderson greeted, opening the gate. "How are you today?" "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. I'm fine, thank you," he replied, forcing a smile. But Mrs. Henderson had known Walter for years and sensed something was wrong. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying, and he seemed more downcast than usual. "Mr. Walter, did something happen? You look down." Walter hesitated. Mrs. Henderson had always been a good listener, but he didn't want to seem like he was playing the victim. On the other hand, keeping everything to himself was becoming very heavy. "It's just that yesterday I went through an unpleasant situation at the supermarket, Mrs. Henderson," he said, starting to pull the weeds from the garden. "What kind of situation?" Walter told her about the whole humiliation from the previous day. How the cashier treated him, how the people in line complained, how he felt like a nuisance. Mrs. Henderson listened to everything in silence, her expression becoming more and more serious. "That is absurd, Mr. Walter," she exclaimed when he finished. "You are a customer like any other. You have every right to do your shopping whenever you can." "But maybe he's right, Mrs. Henderson. Maybe I really am getting in the way." "Getting in the way, my foot," she interrupted, indignant. "You are one of the most polite people I know. Always hard-working, always respectful. How dare they treat you like that?" Mrs. Henderson paused, thoughtful. "Mr. Walter, do you mind if I ask you something? How is your relationship with your daughter, Amanda?" Walter stopped working the soil and looked at her, surprised. "You know Amanda?" "Of course I know her. I watch her news program every day. She's an excellent journalist. I feel proud when I tell the neighbors that she's my gardener's daughter," said Mrs. Henderson with a smile. "But you never talk about her. Why?" Walter sighed deeply. "It's just that she's very busy, Mrs. Henderson. She has an important career. I don't want to bother her life with my old man problems." "Old man problems?" Mrs. Henderson seemed indignant. "Mr. Walter, you are her father. No matter how old you are, you will always be the father. And I'm sure she would be very hurt if she knew you were going through difficulties and didn't tell her. But she has so much to worry about." "So what? Do you think she doesn't worry about you anyway? I bet every time she sees a news story about seniors, she thinks about how you're doing. I bet she wants to know about your life, but maybe doesn't know how to reach out." Mrs. Henderson's words made Walter reflect. Maybe she was right. Maybe, by trying to protect Amanda from his problems, he was actually pushing her away. "You should call her," insisted Mrs. Henderson. "Tell her what happened yesterday. Let her decide if she wants to help or not." Walter finished the work in the garden, thinking about his neighbor's words. When Mrs. Henderson paid him the 30 rees and offered him a coffee, he accepted and stayed chatting a bit longer. She insisted on the subject of his daughter, saying that family was the most important thing in life. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Back at his home, Walter stared at his cell phone for almost an hour. Finally, he decided to call Amanda. The phone rang several times before she answered. "Hello, Dad." Amanda's voice sounded surprised. "How are you? Did something happen?" "Hi, Amanda. Everything's fine, honey. It's just that I wanted to talk to you about something." "Of course, Dad. You can talk. I'm in a meeting, but I can slip away for a minute. Walter hesitated. Maybe it really wasn't a good time. No, honey, if you're busy. Dad, I always have time for you. You can talk. What is it? And so Walter told her everything. The humiliation at the supermarket, the cashier's words, how he felt small and useless. Amanda listened in silence, and he could feel the tension growing on the other end of the line. Dad, this is unacceptable, Amanda exploded when he finished. How dare they treat you like that? What's the name of that supermarket? Amanda, please don't make a scene. I just wanted to get it off my chest. Don't make a scene. Dad, this is age discrimination. It's my job to report this kind of thing. But honey, I don't want to be on television or anything like that. Sir, you don't have to appear if you don't want to. But this situation can't just be ignored. How many other seniors must be going through the same thing? Amanda was right, and deep down Walter knew it. How many other people his age might be suffering similar humiliations in stores? How many were being treated as second-class citizens just for being slower or more fragile? What do you plan to do, Amanda? First, I'm coming over there to talk with you in person. Then we'll decide together how to proceed. This can't be left like this. After hanging up the phone, Walter felt relieved for having told Amanda everything, but also apprehensive about what she might do. He knew his daughter well enough to know she wouldn't let it slide. Amanda had always been a person of strong principles, who wouldn't stand for injustice. Meanwhile, at the newspaper office, Amanda cancelled her afternoon meetings and asked to leave early. She quickly explained to her editor-in-chief that she had an urgent family situation to resolve that might also turn into an important story. "Amanda, are you okay?" asked Richard, her editor-in-chief and longtime friend. "I'm fine, Richard. I just found out my father is going through a situation that hits me professionally too. Do you want to talk about it?" Amanda briefly recounted what had happened to Walter. Richard, who also had elderly parents, was outraged. "Amanda, this is more common than we think. I've heard several similar stories. Maybe it's time we did a series on the subject." "That's exactly what I was thinking. But first I need to take care of my dad." Amanda left the newsroom with a heavy heart. How had she not noticed her father was having difficulties? When was the last time they'd really talked about his life, about how he was feeling, about his needs? On the way to Walter's house, she reflected on how work had consumed her life in recent years. There was always an urgent story, an important meeting, a deadline to meet. And in the middle of it all, she had neglected the most important person, her father. When she arrived at the modest house in East Side, Amanda felt a pang in her chest. It had been months since she'd visited her father, and now she saw how the house needed repairs, how the garden was neglected, how everything had an air of loneliness. Walter opened the door, and his eyes lit up when he saw his daughter. "Amanda, what a wonderful surprise." She hugged him tightly, feeling how much thinner and more fragile he was than she remembered. "Dad, why don't you tell me these things? Why do you suffer alone?" "I didn't want to worry you, honey. I know how busy your life is." "Dad, nothing in my life is more important than you." "Nothing," said Amanda, her eyes welling up. "I'm your daughter. It's my duty and my pleasure to take care of you." They sat in the living room and talked for hours. Walter talked about the loneliness, the financial difficulties, about how he felt like a burden to everyone. Amanda, in turn, talked about how work had consumed her, about how she missed their conversations, about how she wanted to be more present. "Dad, starting today, things are going to change," said Amanda, determined. "First, we're going to resolve this supermarket situation. Then, we're going to organize your life so you don't have to go through any more humiliations. But Amanda, I don't want you to get into trouble because of me." "Dad, it's not trouble, it's justice, and it's my job to report on injustices." That night, Amanda stayed at her father's house. They had dinner together, watched television, and talked about many things that had been left unsaid for a long time. Walter felt lighter than he had in years, and Amanda realized how important that reunion had been. The next day, Amanda had an idea. Instead of simply confronting the supermarket or writing an article exposing the case, she decided to do something more elaborate. She wanted to test how the elderly were treated in various establishments around the city. "Dad, would you be willing to come with me on some shopping trips? I want to see for myself how the elderly are treated in different places." "Of course, honey, but is it just to observe?" "For now, yes, I want to understand the scale of the problem before taking any action." They started by visiting other supermarkets in the area. Amanda discreetly observed how the employees treated her father and other elderly people. In some places, the service was respectful and patient. In others, she witnessed situations that left her outraged. At a supermarket in downtown Bridgeport, Amanda saw an employee making rude comments to an elderly woman who was taking time to choose her products. In another, she witnessed a cashier sighing loudly and making a face at an elderly man who was paying with coins. "Amanda, you see how common it is," said Walter, resigned. "I see, Dad, and I'm getting more and more upset." But it was when they returned to the supermarket where Walter had been humiliated that Amanda witnessed the worst situation. Brandon was at the same register, and there was an elderly woman in line having difficulty carrying her groceries. "Ma'am, don't you have anyone to come do the shopping for you?" said Brandon, annoyed. "It's the same thing every week." The woman, who appeared to be about 80, apologized timidly. "It's just that I live alone, son. My children live far away." "Well, that's not my problem. You have to manage," said Brandon, pushing the bags forcefully. Amanda felt her blood boil. That was too much. She approached the register, keeping her calm. "Excuse me," she said politely. "May I speak to the store manager?" Brandon looked her up and down, clearly irritated at being questioned. "What's the matter? Is there a problem with the service?" "Yes, there is," Amanda replied calmly. "I just witnessed disrespectful treatment of this lady." "Disrespectful? I just told the truth. If she can't carry the groceries, she should ask a family member for help." The elderly woman quickly walked away, clearly embarrassed. Amanda followed her and offered to help carry her groceries to the bus stop. The woman, named Mrs. Gladys, thanked her emotionally. "Thank you so much, dear. It's just that it's really hard for me, but I have no choice. My children live in other states, and I have to manage on my own." "You don't need to justify yourself," Amanda said kindly. "You have every right to be treated with respect." When she returned to the supermarket, Amanda found Brandon telling other employees about the annoying old lady he had served. She approached again. "May I speak to the manager, please?" "You can, but I don't know if it will do any good," said Brandon arrogantly. Mrs. Henderson appeared a few minutes later. "Yes, how can I help you?" "I want to file a formal complaint about this employee's service," said Amanda, pointing to Brandon. "What kind of complaint?" Amanda explained what she had witnessed, both with Mrs. Gladys and the account of what happened to her father. Mrs. Henderson listened with an expression that wavered between embarrassment and irritation. "Look, ma'am," the manager began. Amanda Thompson Williams." The name sounded familiar to Mrs. Henderson, but she couldn't place it. "Ms. Amanda, I understand your concern, but our employees serve many people a day. Sometimes the stress can make someone a little more impatient." "Impatient?" Amanda raised her voice slightly. "This isn't impatience. It's discrimination against the elderly." "Discrimination is a very strong word." "It's the right word, and I will make sure to report this situation." Karen started to get nervous. She didn't know who Amanda was, but the woman's tone indicated she was serious. "Look, let's talk calmly. We can resolve this internally." "No, you can't," said Amanda categorically, "because from what I'm seeing, this is a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident." Brandon, who was listening to the conversation, approached. "Listen here, ma'am. What was your name again?" "Amanda Thompson Williams." When Amanda said her full name, an employee passing by stopped abruptly. It was Tiffany, the young woman who always treated Walter with kindness. "Amanda Thompson Williams," repeated Tiffany, approaching. "The TV journalist. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." The blood drained from Brandon's face. Karen turned pale. Amanda Thompson Williams was one of the most respected journalists in the region, known for her investigative reports and for exposing social injustices. "That's right," confirmed Amanda, staying calm, "and I'm here investigating the treatment of the elderly in commercial establishments." Brandon started sweating. He immediately remembered Walter and how he had humiliated him just a few days before. Could that elderly man be related to the journalist? Miss Amanda, stammered Brandon. If I had known who you were— Oh, so you would have treated me differently if you knew who I was, Amanda cut in. And how do you treat ordinary people who aren't famous journalists? No, that's not it. That's exactly it. You think elderly people deserve less respect than younger people, that people with less money deserve less consideration. Tiffany approached Amanda, hesitant. Miss Amanda, can I say something? Of course. There's an older gentleman who comes here often, Mr. Walter. He has always been very polite, very respectful, but yesterday I saw that he left here very sad after being served by Brandon. I wonder if you know him. Amanda felt her heart tighten. Yes, I do. He is my father. The revelation fell like a bomb in the room. Brandon turned ashen. Karen almost fainted. Tiffany's eyes widened. Your father, murmured Brandon, incredulous. That's right. And I know exactly how you treated him. I know about the humiliations you put him through. I know that you said that elderly people like him think the world revolves around them. Brandon tried to justify himself, but the words wouldn't come out. He remembered the episode perfectly, and now realized the gravity of the situation. Miss Amanda, let's resolve this another way, tried Karen. We can transfer the employee, give him a warning. No, said Amanda firmly. This isn't resolved with a transfer or a warning. This is a matter of culture, of values. And I will expose this situation publicly. Please don't do that, begged Karen. The store will be harmed. We'll lose customers. You should have thought of that before allowing your employees to humiliate the elderly. Amanda took out her phone and started recording. I'm here in the supermarket where my father, Walter Thompson, 73 years old, was humiliated for taking too long to pay for his groceries, she said to the camera. The employee Brandon said that elderly people like my father think the world revolves around them. The manager Karen suggested that he do his shopping at other times so as not to cause a disturbance. Brandon tried to step out of the frame, but Amanda kept filming. This is the reality for many elderly people in our country. They are treated as second-class citizens, as a nuisance, just for being slower or more fragile. Mrs. Karen tried to intervene, but Amanda wouldn't stop. And when confronted about this discrimination, those in charge try to cover it up, to handle it internally, as if humiliating the elderly was something normal that you fix with a simple warning. Several people had stopped to watch the recording. Some employees approached, curious. Customers observed the commotion. Amanda finished the recording and put her phone away. This story is airing tonight, she announced. And I won't stop here. I'm going to investigate other establishments. I'm going to listen to other seniors who have been through similar situations. Mrs. Amanda, please, pleaded Mrs. Karen. Let's try to resolve this. You had your chance to resolve it when my father was humiliated. You did nothing. Now you'll have to face the consequences publicly. Brandon, desperate, tried one last move. Mrs. Amanda, I didn't know he was your father. If I had known— Exactly, Amanda exploded. You didn't know he was my father, but you should have treated him with respect regardless of who he was. Every senior deserves respect. Every human being deserves respect. I can apologize to him? No, Brandon. Your apologies won't erase the humiliation you caused. They won't undo the tears he shed. They won't heal the wound to his self-esteem. Tiffany, who had watched everything in silence, approached Amanda. Mrs. Amanda, I always tried to treat your Walter with kindness. He's a wonderful person. I'm very sad to know he went through that. Thank you, Tiffany. My father has told me about you, said you were always kind to him. If I could have done something— You did what you could by being kind and respectful. The problem isn't you, it's people like this Brandon and institutions that allow this kind of behavior. Amanda got ready to leave, but first turned to Mrs. Karen. I hope that after the story airs tonight, you will rethink your customer service policies. I hope you train your employees about respect and empathy, because if you don't change, I will keep reporting. As Amanda left the supermarket, she could hear Mrs. Karen arguing with Brandon in a low voice. It was obvious the employee was in serious trouble. Outside, Amanda found Walter waiting in the car. He had witnessed part of the argument through the window and was nervous. "Amanda, you shouldn't have made a scene," he said, worried. "Dad, it wasn't a scene, it was justice. And you need to understand you did nothing wrong. What was wrong was the way they treated you. But now it's going to be on TV, everyone will know. And it's a good thing they do. How many other fathers and grandparents are going through the same situation? It's time to expose this." On the way back home, Amanda explained her plans to Walter. "Dad, I'm going to do a series of stories about the treatment of the elderly. I want to hear other stories, investigate other establishments. This needs to change. And are you sure this is what you should do?" "I'm absolutely sure. And you are going to help me with it." "Me?" "Yes. I want you to come with me. Help me better understand the reality for seniors. You're going to be my consultant in this investigation." Walter felt important for the first time in a long time. His daughter wasn't just defending him, she was including him in her work, valuing his experience and knowledge. That afternoon, Amanda worked feverishly on the story. She edited the video recorded at the supermarket, prepared the text, contacted experts on senior rights. She wanted the report to be impactful and informative. And at 8 o'clock that night, the story aired on the region's main news program. Amanda presented the case with the seriousness and professionalism that characterized her, but you could hear the emotion in her voice when she spoke about her father. "Good evening. I'm here to share a story that happened to someone very special to me, my father. But it could have happened to any one of your fathers or mothers," Amanda began. She narrated the entire episode, showed the video of the confrontation in the supermarket, and presented data about discrimination against the elderly in Brazil. The story had a huge impact. Walter watched from his living room, accompanied by Mrs. Henderson, who had insisted on watching the report with him. "Mr. Walter, your daughter is a warrior," exclaimed Mrs. Henderson emotionally. "How wonderful!" "It really is, Mrs. Henderson. I had no idea she was going to do all this." "And she's right. What happened to you cannot happen to other elderly people." On social media, Amanda's story went viral. Hundreds of people shared similar experiences, telling stories of elderly relatives who had been humiliated in commercial establishments. The supermarket where Walter was humiliated received hundreds of protest calls. Many customers cancelled their orders and began to boycott the store. The pressure was so great that the store owner was forced to take drastic measures. The next day, Brandon was fired for just cause. Mrs. Karen received a suspension and was required to take a course on serving elderly people. The supermarket issued a public apology and promised changes to its customer service policies. But Amanda didn't stop there. She created a series called Dignity Has No Age, where she investigated the treatment of the elderly in various sectors of society. The series won awards and gained national recognition. Walter became a kind of ambassador for the cause. He accompanied Amanda to recordings, gave testimonies, and helped identify problems and solutions. For the first time in years, he felt useful and valued. The relationship between father and daughter was completely transformed. Amanda reorganized her schedule to spend more time with Walter. They made a habit of having lunch together at least twice a week and doing their shopping together on Saturdays. The supermarket where it all began underwent a radical transformation. They created a special service program for the elderly, with trained staff, priority lanes that were actually respected, and even a support service to help carry groceries. Tiffany, the employee who had always treated Walter with kindness, was promoted to supervisor of the new program. She became a friend of the family and always asked about Walter when Amanda went shopping. 6 months after the incident, Walter returned to the supermarket for the first time. He was greeted with smiles and apologies from all the staff. The new manager made a point of greeting him personally and assuring him he would always receive the best service. "How does it feel coming back here, Dad?" asked Amanda, who was with him. "I feel respected, daughter, and happy to know our story helped other elderly people avoid going through what I went through." They were helped by Tiffany, who greeted them with a warm smile. "Mr. Walter, what a joy to see you here. How are you?" "I'm very well, Tiffany. Thank you for always being so kind to me." You deserve all the respect in the world, and can I tell you something? After everything that happened, many employees completely changed the way they treat elderly customers. You made a difference." As they shopped, Walter observed how other elderly people were being treated. He saw patient, smiling employees, always willing to help. The transformation was visible. In the checkout line, he remembered how it all started right there. The trembling hands counting coins, Brandon's impatience, the humiliation he felt. Now he saw the cashier helping an elderly lady organize her groceries with care and affection. "Dad, what are you thinking about?" asked Amanda, noticing his thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how things have changed, daughter, and how important it was that you decided to fight for this cause." "The fight was ours, Dad. You gave me the motivation and purpose. Without your story, none of this would have happened." When they left the supermarket, Walter felt renewed, not just because of the changes in customer service, but because of the certainty that his experience had served a greater purpose. His humiliation had transformed into a banner for fighting for the rights of the elderly. The series Dignity Has No Age continued for 2 years, covering issues like public health for seniors, social security, urban accessibility, and the job market for older adults. Amanda became a national reference on the subject. Walter, at 75, discovered himself as an activist. He participated in lectures, gave testimonies at public hearings, collaborated with organizations defending the rights of the elderly. His story inspired others to report discrimination and fight for their rights. Walter's personal transformation was even deeper than his professional one. He began to feel like part of society again, to have purpose and dignity. His self-esteem recovered completely, and he developed a new perspective on aging. Amanda, in turn, discovered that her best work came from her most painful personal experience. The closeness with her father brought an emotional depth to her journalism that she didn't have before. Her reports became more human, more touching. 2 years after the initial episode, Amanda received a National Journalism Award for the series Dignity Has No Age. At the award ceremony, she made sure to thank the most important person in her life. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to my father, Walter Thompson, who had the courage to tell his story even while feeling ashamed. It belongs to all the elderly who face discrimination daily. It belongs to everyone who believes that respect and dignity have no age." Walter was in the audience, emotional. Beside him were Mrs. Henderson, Tiffany, and several other people he met during this journey. Everyone applauded when Amanda called him to the stage. "Dad, come up here. This award is ours." Walter stepped onto the stage hesitantly, but with pride written all over his face. Amanda hugged him tightly in front of hundreds of people. "Thank you, daughter, for turning my pain into hope for others," he whispered in her ear. "Thank you, Dad, for teaching me that true journalism begins at home by caring for those we love." End of story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story of overcoming? Do you know an elderly person who has been through a similar situation? Do you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of age? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories.